Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Blacklist. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up after the previous episode, Marvin's trying to leave, trying to get away. I was actually kind of surprised that the FBI ended up catching him. I expected him to kind of be in the wind most of the episode. It's like, nope. I guess because he was in the wind ever since the end of episode, what was that, 19? No, 20. He was ever since, he's kind of been in the wind ever since, so I guess that's why they didn't feel the need to kind of make it like, oh, he's out and about and doesn't get caught to the very... I was surprised the FBI caught him as quickly as they did and as early in the episode as they did. So I love that he tried to hide out in the plane and Wrestler was there waiting for him. So, cool, he's arrested, and they're like, yeah, we know this isn't what you wanted, Reddington. He's like, no, you guys don't know the ramifications of what you've done. And I love that Reddington chews Harold out, being like, right, all the crimes you committed to get here, because for Harold, it's like, right, you'd rather him be dead more so than helping me stay out of prison. And Reddington's like, you don't know. Well, first and foremost, you should have come to me, which I 100% agree. Everyone's gotten some shady, like, favor from Reddington. Problem is, it always comes as a pro quo type of situation. I scratch your back, you scratch mine type of situation. But everyone's gotten a helping hand in that regard. I mean, even Harold in that regard. So it's like, you always had this powerful asset that you never turned to. All this could have probably been prevented if Harold didn't go down the route that he did. He had a powerful source like Reddington. If he had come to him, had come to the team earlier, who knows how this all would have turned out. And that's the thing for Reddington. It's like, you should have come to me. That was your biggest mistake. And now it's like, you do not realize the mistake you made. You guys don't realize who this guy is, because the fact of the matter is, he was my lawyer. You have to be pretty damn good, and there has to be at least something about you for you to get that job position. So Harold goes to question him, but he's like, Harold, like everything I did, from killing Liz to framing you, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to get what I want in the end. He's like saying that at the end of the day, you're a pawn. Because you're allowing Reddington to kind of always do whatever he wants to. Well, he's like, I'm going to talk to Cynthia, and I'm going to offer your bosses a sweet deal. Let me replace Reddington, which I'm like, first and foremost, he's saying like, oh, he'll continue giving the Blacklist. It's like, you have some connections because of it, but you don't have access to the full everything that Reddington has, that pulled what the system he was going to give to Liz that gives out the names of the blacklisters. Marv didn't have like the access to that. The only person who like was going, like, this whole operation, this whole machine, every aspect, every facet of it was going to be passed to Liz, and that was something he never had access to. But he's smart enough. He has all the right connections. Every connection that Reddington typically had, he probably had access to most of them, probably not all of them. So he's like, I can fill that role. It's like, you are good, Marvin, but I still, you are no Raymond Reddington. You would have never been able to fully pull that off. But the fact is, he believed himself to be the person capable of doing that. It's kind of interesting. So it's like, cool. And the Attorney General will take this deal. Why? Because the fact is that, or not, maybe not the Attorney General, but whoever sets this whole thing up will take this deal because they've seen the long list of stuff. Yes, Reddington, it becomes the bad outweighing the good. Reddington's able to do all these crimes. Yes, he gives us some criminals we weren't aware of, but it's always a situation where he's off doing something terrible or benefiting from it. It's like, at the very least with me, you'll kind of get a clean slate. Also, the task force needs to be disbanded. We're going to make a new task force, the Marvin Gerard task force. I don't think Reddington has ever referred to this task force as the Raymond Reddington task force, which like shows you how like conceited Marvin is. But it's like, right, we're going to start from scratch, and it's the better deal, and they jump at it. But the good and bad of it all is, yes, Marvin gets a good deal, and his task force would come to an end. Harold saying that just because they captured Marvin doesn't, and got the real killer behind all this, doesn't necessarily mean he'll walk away from this guilt, that Harold will get off scot-free. The rest of the team will probably be disbanded and put in like other different sections of the FBI. So they're all going to be okay. Him, not some, there's no guarantee on that front. So, but ultimately, Marvin's deal would mean good and bad of it all. Means, yes, he gets what he wants and he gets away with murdering Liz and setting all this in motion and framing Harold. But at the very least, Harold would get a clear slate from it because it's like, right, they won in the end because it's like, cool, they see that Marvin's someone that they are a lot more able to control because Reddington has always been and continues to be so much of a wild card. Because there's also the thing of a lot of people, you know, because Cynthia says it, that a lot of people think working with a criminal like Reddington, who was the top of the FBI's most wanted list, who was at the biggest, is part of one of the, if not the biggest criminal organization in the world, kind of is beneath their country to do something like that. So not everyone always signed off on it. So now having the opportunity to boot him, it's like, okay, Marvin's still the lesser of the two evils in their mind, and it gives them an opportunity to rein things back in and finally have control. Because I think Marvin would have eventually become a wild card himself, but. And because everything he would have done, he would have just been following Reddington's playbook. You know, he wouldn't have been able to do this on his own. He would have just, I mean, the only reason why he got this far is because, yeah, he knows stuff inside and out, but he took everything that Reddington was going to pass on to Liz to use to get to this point. So it's like, it's not like you all 100% got here of your own merit. Because when it's all said and done, I love that Reddington, that person, what's her name? Was it Claire or like Carol? Her dad, Alfred, it's someone that Reddington's tied to. It's like, right, you could have killed my father 20 years ago, but you decided not to. And why? He's like, well, I found out the reason why he was stealing money for me was to try and help you go to college, which, interestingly enough, kind of connecting it to Liz, we know that Reddington set up a situation so that she could go to college and stuff like that. So I think I don't know if it was probably, I don't know if it would have been around that time or not. Maybe not, but I think that's what probably correlated that, because even Reddington was like, right, you're kind of, you know, you change with age. So I think maybe he was a little more sympathetic to what Alfred was up to. Was the guy's name Alfred, or am I mistaking? Whatever the case may be, like, he was a little more sympathetic in that regard, I think. But she's also like, right, but you saw an opportunity because you saw it as an investment in my future. And he's like, yep, a father would do this wholehearted and want nothing back. I'm not your dad. So yes, I am calling in a favor. So she was used to call in a different judge, because I love that the FBI thought, you know, the guy who gave them the information, because they were like watching, it's like, oh, this guy is getting paid with cash by Reddington, which I'm like, that should show you that Reddington knows what's what. Then to me, I was like, okay, that seems like that's done on purpose. Because they can meet in a much more discreet place that the FBI isn't aware of. Why would they go? Like, that should have been the key sign. Also, the actor who, the guard that they went to was the actor who played JT in Prodigal Son. I was like, hey! Which obviously just, anytime I see anyone outside from that show, I just kind of get a little depressed because I'm like, oh, just a reminder that show got canceled. It just still bums me out. But regardless, I don't know whether that guard was 100% in on it, as in a regard of, oh, like, he truly believed that this is what Reddington wanted, or did Reddington ask him to lie? He probably was just another person thrown under the bus to be like, yeah, the guy's like, fine, I'll tell you the truth about this tonal because that's what Reddington wanted access to. It's hard to say. I felt like the whole thing was fishy because I was like, right, it's my favorite phrase, the Kansas City Shuffle. Once again, just a magic trick of, while you're so busy looking left thinking you got the trick figured out, I'm over here on the right doing something else. I figured there had to be another play here. It's like, there's no way Reddington made that. Because I thought Harold was going to pick on it because Arrow's kind of like, and I don't remember if it was Wrestler or Dembe that was like, what's wrong? And he was thinking about the promise he had made Agnes. She had lost her mom. First night she was living with him and Charlene, he made a promise. It was like, I know your mom can't be here. I loved her and I miss her too. But I promise, me and Charlene, we're not going anywhere. And we hope that soon you feel that way about us. Like the whole Wild Horses situation of like the Rolling Stones. I might have heard a Rolling Stones song and never realized it. I think that particular lane of rock isn't 100% my cup of tea, but still. But I love that metaphor of like, even the whole point is even wild horses can't keep me away from you type of situation. So that was kind of like supposed to be their symbol of like, no matter how, even if I have to go far, be away from you, I will come back. Like nothing will ever keep me away from you. You know, it's just even sadder under this context. But I knew Reddington wasn't going to use that passageway to sneak in. I mean, the guy's broken out of prison before, but it's like, yeah, sneaking into prison's kind of a whole other lane. But I was like, yeah, I knew something was so fishy. I knew something was off. But yeah, using that judge to pull the other judge away so Reddington can just sneak in there. And Marvin's like, right, I didn't see that coming. I love that before Wrestler and Marvin were in transport, because they were transporting Marvin, which I thought Reddington was going to hit him then, because I was like, oh, that's the whole point, to get him out of the prison so that Reddington could get to him, which, I mean, it still worked in the end, but I thought he was going to hit him in transport. But it's like, yeah, that's too much attention, especially with all eyes on this situation being as it is. But Wrestler, and he's like, right, I always wondered what I would do to the person who ended up being responsible for Liz's death. But he can't do. He's like, if I was the only one that was going to suffer the consequences, then I would kill you. Right, I would kill you myself. But so many people would be hurt by this, in particular Cooper. So because of that, Wrestler doesn't want to, go after Marvin. He's like, right, you won, aren't you happy? And Marvin's like, no, there was no winning in this. Both me and Reddington lost in this. And for him, it's like, this is the worst day of the short, whatever remains of my life, because Reddington's never going to forget. Like, yeah, you might stop this one plan, but Reddington's always got another. I will be looking over my shoulder for the rest of forever how long my life is. Reddington is not going to forgive me. He's going to come at me, especially considering, oh, I'm the person that killed Liz. Like, you are going to, like, temper yourself for Harold's sake. Reddington wouldn't necessarily do that. It's like, no, I'm going to come at you with the full force of everything I've got. I will find a way to get you sooner or later. So for him, it's like, right, this is the beginning of, like, the terrible, like, after this, it's like, yeah, I'm surviving. That's all this is. I'm getting what he's like, even, do you think I got what I want? I didn't want any of this. It doesn't change the fact that you still went through with it. You still killed Liz. So your desires, your wants, your greed got the best of you. It's like, no, your entitlement to, like, this is what I deserve. This should be mine. It shouldn't be someone like Liz. She's never trustworthy or whatnot. So later on, Reddington and him had that conversation that Reddington says, like, right, I get it. He's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it still sucks that you did what you did, but I 100% understand why you went down the route you did, why you felt like, right, Liz wasn't the right person. He's like, right, my relationship with Liz was never something that could be completely understood. Once again, Marvin doesn't know their true relationship. He's just like, right, oh, this is some FBI agent you have some connection to. Marvin might be aware of some of the ties, but he will never know the true depth of everything that existed between Liz and Reddington. But it's like, I get it. Like, from an outside perspective, even from an insider perspective, it seems kind of wild that I would try and leave everything to Liz. I get that. He's like, when it came to Liz, a lot of my decisions were emotional, not pragmatic. So I get that. But at the end of the day, and yes, you put up a lot of you weren't okay with it. He was like, yeah, not in the slightest. It's like, yes, but that was beside the point. It was my decision. He's like, even if the company, even if this empire that we built together came crumbling down, he's like, yes, even if that was the case, because it was my choice to make Liz the leader of all of this. You should have stayed in your lane because, and for Marvin, it's like, no, we built this together, which I'm like, first and foremost, I think you're not realizing, regardless if you built this all together, this has always and was probably always going to be Liz's legacy, because this whole thing was built for Liz's sake. That's all. Like, Liz has been the foundation of this entire organization for a very, very long time. Before you even came into the picture, there was this was all for Liz's sake. This whole criminal organization was built for her sake. And to be fair, did Reddington always plan to give it to Liz? I don't know. Maybe eventually. So Marvin, those weren't always in the card. But the moment Reddington became a part of Liz's life and Liz started going in the direction she started going in, and Reddington started following, they're following each other down this path. Maybe that was set in stone then, or maybe Reddington always planned. I doubt Reddington thought that far in advance, but I still think at the end of the day, this was always going to be Liz's legacy because it was built for her sake, so it only made sense for her to eventually grab it, take it all, and make it her own. But, because for Reddington, it's like, right, you killed Liz, you framed Harold, you even used a specter of Kate Kaplan to do all that you've done, all the damage you've caused, all the terrible stuff that you've done to get this far. And I love that Marvin's like, well, at least I had the courage to stand up to you. And I love that Reddington's like, what? Fuck that. I'm not going to let you have that courage. The fact of the matter is, you could have had killed Liz in many other opportunities and ways. How did you go about it? The most cowardice way. You couldn't even kill her face to face. You couldn't even kill her yourself. What you did was you manipulated Van Dyke into killing her. And then what did you do? You did a long string of things to cover your tracks because you knew I was coming after you. That's not the courageous way. That was a coward's way. Don't even try and front like you're some courageous person. Like, the only reason why you went to, he's like, but I had the courage to go to war with you, is because you had no other moves to make. Don't make it seem like, oh, you courageously made this decision. You made this decision because you were backed into a corner because I decided to come back and you knew I'd look into this, that I'd bring the full force of everything to look into what happened to Liz to make sure all perpetrators were taken care of. So don't act like this was some like, I'm so brave. It's like, no. You played the only cards you were dealt. So that doesn't make it courage. It just makes it, this is the only play I have, so I have no choice. You weren't given a choice. So I love, like, Reddington not giving him that. Like, don't act like you're some genius mastermind. And once again, almost being like, you have the audacity to say that you could do this. You never could, you never can be, and you never will be me. First and foremost, like, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm the one that runs this thing. Because I still believe you never know who Liz could have been, how that the organization could have prospered under her like leadership. Yes, once again, it's that retroactive thing that yes, like Megan Boone left the show, so that's still, but like just within the context of the story, you know, obviously this is them kind of retroactively making this be the story of just like everything happening with Liz, but like I'm saying specifically from a storytelling perspective, Marvin's justification for doing what he's done is like, you don't know how things would have flown under Liz's light leadership, but once again, he was always very anti Reddington and the Liz situation, but he's like, fine, you want to put me down, put me down. But then we see later on that Marvin's alive. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, why did Reddington let him live? It's like, well, I guess because of the Cooper of it all. And so Marvin signed his deal. Everything's good. Now, Harold's name is cleared. He got to go home. And even Charlene's like, right, we'll explain it to Agnes one day and she'll understand. It's like, and she probably wouldn't be, I don't know how she'd feel about that, knowing like, right, regardless of it all, even if it meant keeping Cooper in her life, probably being older, probably it won't sit well with her knowing, wait, the guy who was responsible for my mom's death gets to walk away, because that didn't sit well with anyone else either, so. But ultimately, we find out that Reddington gave him an opportunity. It's like, no, I'm going to give you the opportunity that you never gave Liz. You get to choose how you go out. And it's like, and if I refuse, then we will both find out what kind of dark things I would do, because he made it clear from the beginning that I find out whoever killed Liz, what dark things I would do. I'm not even sure what I'm capable of, but you will find out. But I'm giving you the opportunity to bow out with grace, go out your own way. You get to choose. And, Marvin ended up killing himself, but he ended up saying that he's proud of what they've built together, this empire, but he did pull off one final middle finger, and maybe, you know, because Reddington didn't want to, because it's like, right, no matter what ends up happening to me, he's like, it'll be as if you pull the trigger yourself, Reddington, because Reddington didn't want to do anything terrible, because he even said, like, right, we were never friends. Yes, we were friends to some extent, but it was all a means to an end. Like, I made it so that you would never want to betray me. Like, he brought it up last episode. I brought you in because I saw there was a void inside of you. I wanted to fill with myself so that you would be obsessed with me, that you'd never want to go against me, that everything you would do would always be in my best interest. You were always a means to an end. And I did think of you as a friend and an ally. It's just like Kate's betrayal, where it's like he didn't want, well, the thing, I'm surprised because in the end, he did attempt to kill Kate, so it's funny that he wouldn't do the same thing for Marvin, but I guess, like, right, he wanted It's like he wanted things to end quickly with Kate. It's like, right, I'm gonna give you an end. And obviously, who knows how the season 4 finale would have played out if she hadn't jumped off the bridge to kill herself. So, but Marvin set things in motion. One final middle finger. The guy he had met in prison, who was like a well-known like assassin, he tells him like, "Oh no, Reddington, he's the reason why you're here, along with a whole bunch of other criminals. Here's a list." So you're like, okay. So this isn't the first time the Blacklist has been weaponized. Now it's getting weaponized in this regard, where a guy is going to be amassing an army of every criminal that's been locked up, because no one knows that it was Reddington that led to this. And now Reddington, this was just a precursor to the upcoming war. And things are going to get bad, because soon the entire criminal world will turn against Reddington once the truth comes out. He's going to be trying to mitigate all this. He's going to be trying to put out these fires, but it doesn't change the fact that this is all going to go super pear-shaped. Once the criminal world, those who are locked up by Reddington joining forces together to come after him. Once again, there's still things like the Skinner he hasn't fully used, but how much of his organization is going to turn against him the moment they find out, like, wait, you're a rat? You're a snitch? Well, that's going to be a whole issue in itself. And he's going to try and put out those fires, but who knows whether he can or not, because one final middle finger from Marvin Gerard in the end, that is like, right, if I can't have this, then I will be responsible for getting my revenge against Reddington, and I will burn this all to the ground along with him. If I can't have it, if I can't walk away from this, if I always have to look over my shoulders for the rest of my life, because it's also the thing of, he loved Reddington, and hurting Reddington the way he did, he didn't enjoy that, but it was just a means to, and it was survival. It's like, it didn't have to come down to this. Marvin, you decided. Just like he tried to turn it on Harold. Like, no, Harold could have walked away at any point in time, but he decided to commit so many felonies in the process of trying to clear his name that it's like, right. So, I wonder where the Lou of it all. Well, because I think the last time we heard, Cooper was like, oh no, like, he didn't, like, he made sure that Lou wouldn't take the fall, even though Lou was, like, turning against him, but I think that's just kind of, like, all dealt with, so, probably... Who knows if that kind of put a stain on Lou and Harold's relationship or not, so. But yeah, Cynthia arriving with the news, like, yeah, Marvin Gerard is dead, so that deal is done, but it doesn't fall back on Cooper, because it's like, right at the end of the day, you can't be held responsible for what he did, because the order was also that they were going to be hunting Reddington. Now, he wouldn't be part of the task force, and they'd have to be hunting him going forward. Just like all FBI agents, again, because they'd probably end up the task force would end up getting broken up, and they'd go to those different positions, having to hunt him again. But it all worked out in the end, so... we're back to square one, like Harold said, like almost like none of this happened. And Cynthia's like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. So it's like, yeah, everyone's sweeping this under the rug, like this whole ordeal didn't happen. But once again, the after effects are going to be felt as it ripples out, because Reddington doesn't know there's a storm coming. Which obviously I can never say that phrase without thinking about the Jamie's Elsewhere song. They said a storm was coming. But regardless... so that's going to be interesting. We do see, well, we get a little bit of talks about where everyone's going to be going forward. Reddington's going away with the Mirsay and Weecha for a little bit to kind of get away. Then Harold and Wrestler seem like they're going to be sticking around, and so will Dembe, but Aram is planning on taking some time away just because of just everything. He's just like, I kind of need to take this time away. And even Harold saying, like, right, I'm sure Liz would be happy about that. We find out Alina's been getting all these major headaches because it turns out she's pregnant. Still, we don't know whether this has anything to do with the weapon that was used against her in the long run, whether there's still going to be effects from that. But the headaches are mainly getting worse, are mainly a byproduct of her being pregnant. So what happens there, she's going to take some time off as well. And even if she ends up finding out she can't go back in the field, she's kind of content with that, because she's like, right, my life is just meant to take a different path. So I enjoy everyone sharing their thoughts about their time with Liz. Harold saying that he actually had Liz profile herself at one point in time. And it's like, right, how different that woman was from the woman who she was then versus the woman I came to know and eventually loved. and even Dembe telling the story of a young Liz playing like a soccer game, and just, yeah, it was like, oh, it's kind of a mess of a game, but just like everyone laughing just like fun, and everyone comparing bruises and scrapes, and hearing that laugh, and Dembe being like, I almost thought it was Raymond, and then it was Liz's laugh, and then here, like, when that time they spent together before she died last season, that, like, them all together, hearing all three of them laugh, it's like, right, that same heart, that same person, that same feeling, that same kind of tragic heart that all three of them share. You know, it's like, yeah, a grandparent with their child, with their grandchild. It was a beautiful thing, and just to hear that laugh, it really hit Dembe, you know? So, thought that was kind of a nice way of remembering Liz in the aftermath of all this. So, but once again, this is the quiet before the storm, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see how things take off, where things kind of go from here. So I already knew that the show was getting renewed for a 10th season, but it also seems like there are people exiting, and I'm assuming it's the actor who plays Aram, based on what I've seen, and I didn't read the other person, but I'm assuming it's the actress who plays Park. They're probably like exiting as a series regular, that maybe if they do pop up again, it will probably in the regard of like maybe a special guest starring role or something like that. So I'm assuming we're going to get new cast to like fill that void to some extent next season. So that's definitely going to be interesting, especially with everything going on. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go forward on that front. The whole Mirsay and Wicha thing is going to be interesting too, to see. Well, because we know where Wicha stands. Like, I'm sure she'd come back, but Mirsay probably wouldn't be too happy about that, even with all this kind of being dealt with. Because once again, it's going to be the aftermath of this coming storm. Is also a byproduct of. I mean, it's on a lot of people that things came to this far. It's on Harold, Reddington, and Marvin that things have kind of gotten this far. So next season's definitely going to be interesting with all of this. So I'm very excited to see what the next season has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.